Tomorrow is shaped today, through actions or through indifference. Tomorrow depends upon good planning, and good planning involves the needs and aspirations of various interest groups that shape the life of a community. This is the story of an area in central Minneapolis as seen through the eyes and minds of people living and working there.
City living's really like a dominant thing. Once you get into city living, the city dominates you.
I like the area as it is. I like the urban setting. I think there are inherent attractive qualities of this area. One of those is its close proximity to downtown. By living downtown, one can save a lot of time, and by walking to work or walking to shop or walking to entertainment. The area itself is where it is its qualities.
The city dominates you. You know, you live, work, and entertain yourself in the city. You know.
The Loring Park area becoming a neighborhood residential area. I think that's a beautiful area.
Of course, we have a very wonderful park down the street, Loring Park. I feel that we should make as much use of that as we possibly can.
Even though I've only been a resident for a short time, I feel at home, very much so.
And I think the major attraction still is ability to walk to and from work and proximity to cultural amenities.
I think people might come down to see what's going on. I think people who live in the suburbs have a tendency to live with all their own kind.
Symphony coming in, again the Guthrie and those things. Again, the convenient shopping. It doesn't cost as much for gas if you live downtown. Everything is a plus for downtown. I think downtown is the place.
Here you have proximity to the Walker-Guthrie area. You have very close proximity to downtown Minneapolis. You have jobs down here. You haven't got comfortable recreational areas here other than the park itself, which is nice. I mean, Loring Park.
There's a lot of happiness around the place already. I mean, Shakespeare in Loring Park and the symphony orchestra playing around and just free, happy movement of all ages and types of people.
Like when I come home from work or on a Saturday, there are lots of different kinds of people, but that makes me think that the area is not particularly desperate. You walk through the park and you see people that look vaguely well-to-do, even just out enjoying the park because they don't have it. You know, they have their little apartment space, and maybe it's a very well-to-do apartment space, but it doesn't have anything green in it. And you also see very poor ADC mothers and blacks and Indians, and they're all having a good time.
Nearly everyone knows that there's a bunch of pimps who have a stable of girls that they send out into the streets. I don't like to say what I think about that. There must be a better way of making a living. I found this old man sleeping on the street. He only had one arm. I rather felt sorry for him. So I brought him over here, and I wanted to clean him up a bit. But my wife didn't want any part of it. She's afraid. Everybody I know is afraid.
Well, I suppose my generation is still hung up on crime in the streets. So I suppose that's one specific thing that has to be dealt with, although I don't think Minneapolis is really that bad.
We organized a community group that consists mostly of older people, not young radicals, people who've lived here for 20, 25 years. They don't live in homes, but they live in apartments, yet they consider their apartments their homes. So we are actively involved in the city's plans and hope we can have some effect so that they treat the people who live here as human beings.
Maybe they're associating with each other and maybe they're not. But the park is really a meeting place. And walking down the streets, I don't feel particularly intimidated by people passing by.
Between the core and the Loring Park, the difficulties have to do with the nature of the present population and the past history of migration patterns in that area. It became an area in transition, so to speak, as populations began to move out, and this move, of course, occurred as far back as the turn of the century, along with the rise of the streetcar and then the automobile, resulting in a so-called population in transition, which really was a complex of populations that didn't have very much to do with one another. And after World War II, you had the development of a rooming house district in that area with heavy concentration of bars on Nicollet Avenue. It was a place where people visited from south central Minneapolis, where people came for, in quotes, a good time, where people came for the lower middle class action that included everything from small strip joints to very good jazz places. But it was an area that continued to blight the residences.
I feel that it's kind of a run-down, depressing-looking area.
There's certainly a lot of places along Nicollet where small businesses that are really run down, actually there's nothing left of the buildings. The buildings are kind of rotten. People get really discouraged. I know if I worked in an environment like that, I would be really discouraged too. It's not really an area that is conducive to American-type spaces. Well, the apartment that I live in is very small. It's for very tight economical living, and you just can't put up a lot of split-level houses, and you can't do a lot of things that people in the suburbs look for. I mean, that's why they move to the suburbs. They want to get out of the feelings of the closely packed people, and I don't think even high-rise apartments would attract them back. Sure, the building that I live in is really dirty, but on the outside, and it could really use a good sandblasting and new awnings and a lot of different things, and that's true of all the buildings in that particular residential area. But I would rather pay lower rents and live with a building that needs sandblasting on the outside because it's nice on the inside.
The upper Hennepin Avenue area is really decaying. Well, I think right now there's a high crime rate in this area, and there's a high transient rate. It's a lower economic area. The housing is not good. I don't know if it's technically substandard, but I've been in housing similar. The housing is not good. There are very few amenities in the area. Business on upper Hennepin Avenue here by the Basilica is almost non-existent. There's a lot of vacant stores.
I don't think this specific area is too poor in itself. Some of the apartment buildings have been renovated and improved. I'm more concerned about Hennepin Avenue space being cleaned.
specific streets, from say Grant up to Lake Street, I think it needs to be actually remodeled. I'd like to see many of the buildings right over here on LaSalle torn down and have, say, some low-rent housing type buildings built, so that the people who do live in this area, and most of them are on some form of welfare or relief, could at least have a low-income, respectable type building to live in.
Rather than destroying the character of the area as it is, I think an attempt to consciously renovate many of the buildings that are structurally sound and could be renovated would attract a large portion of the people who do not now live here.
I wouldn't like to have real, high-priced homes or buildings developed. The simple fact that then you would have to relocate all the people that are now finding.
To me, it seems like the buildings should just be torn down and new ones put up. But I'm not in their position. I don't know what the small businessmen feel.
Well, I think that we have to have possibly a mixture of residential business, and of course we're a service agency, so we have to stay close to the Loop area.
The obvious kind of answer is to try to develop housing which will be attractive to people already living there, and at the same time will be attractive to people who want to move back into a near inner city area.
Well, I think improvements should go along not only physical lines of rebuilding the area, but along working with the people that live in the area. So I just sort of think that beyond the physical rebuilding of the area, there's a lot of good human resources here that can be saved too.
But I mean, to attract people back to the city, you got to have more of a relaxed atmosphere, more activities around as far as families go.
If an area already has a bad reputation, it becomes very hard to raise the psychological value of the land within a period of 2-3 years. And it probably can be done over a period of time, obviously by increasing the aesthetics of the area. If there's very good design, then that would help. Secondly, if there were some sentimentally identifiable sense for a population that's homogeneous either with regard to ethnicity or with regard to an occupational setting.
I think that Hennepin Avenue should be commercialized with new buildings, nice buildings, the old torn down. It's a natural commercial area and it should be used as such.
What kind of activities do you think should be planned for this area in order to make it a more attractive area?
I don't know. I would say maybe an extension of Loring Park, maybe art fair, an art flea market. I would probably lean towards the arts.
Build some decent complexes, apartment complexes.
It's unfortunate you have to have a lot of space for automobiles. The apartments around here don't have garages. There's very little off-street parking. This has to be taken into account.
I know that a lot of stuff has to be torn down, and I'd hope that what's worthwhile can be saved.
I think that this building is an example of what you can do.
Well, I would hope that they would leave some of the older buildings up and not build a whole lot of IDS towers around here. Because, it probably is a good building, but, not for this part of the country.
I think that if you could offer outdoor recreational facilities and make it an especially attractive place with little shops and everything that you need to be comfortable and to go to work easily. It would be nice to have some little bus shelters. It gets pretty cold out there waiting for the bus, but if people could leave their cars at home and go downtown, if they live or work in this area, it would be nice to have little shops and restaurants and a lot of things that would make it attractive.
My concern is that the area does not become another golden ghetto in the heart of the city.
How do you think we could avoid high-cost ghettos in new residential developments?
The only way is to have some housing program that works much better to attract low-income people to the housing or make it available within a socially healthy environment than now is the case.
Attempts at socioeconomic mix in housing on a voluntary basis historically have never been very successful in this country. The only instances where it does happen is in instances of very high density, where there are really subcultural blocks which live side by side but have different orientations, can move to and from their housing by different modes of transportation. Well, those people, though they are physically in close proximity, culturally they are worlds apart. They could be 1,000 miles apart, and only a physical proximity can be accomplished. So perhaps the only way you can get what appears to be a socioeconomic mix, but it won't be a real socioeconomic mix, is to create conditions where access and orientation are essentially very different, even though proximity is very close. I would say economic and social and political forces have a great deal more to do with whether a viable community emerges than the physical configuration of that community. What the physical setting can do, really, is permit certain tendencies to reinforce themselves and grow on themselves, or if it is badly conceived, it can interfere with that kind of thing happening. But its role is much more passive in the total picture of what forces come together to create a community than we would like to think.
A major residential and commercial development is being planned along the northern Mississippi shore of downtown by the Burlington Northern Railroad Company. What do you think would make the development attractive to people from various income groups?
An attempt will have to be made to design, as much as physical design will do it, and attract a set of populations that will want to come there for social reasons related to the immediate community, aside from the commercial and cultural amenities. And that's a problem. If the anticipated population in the Burlington Northern development is to be a high-income population, then it would have been better if there were a heavy concentration, say, of hospitals or of insurance firms or of governmental agencies in the area to which would be attracted for occupational reasons comparatively high-salaried professionals. Now, that may be another difficulty in the Burlington Northern development. For lower income or middle income, for that mix to occur, again, there should be within an economically feasible distance, meaning for transportation purposes, there should be a sense of being able to make an income in the area. Without that, it may be difficult to get a mix. Then the only other factor operating that I could see would be the availability of comparatively low-cost housing, lower cost than poor people or middle-income people would ordinarily find elsewhere.
Unless there is really a fundamental change in values, a different attitude toward lifestyle, I think it's going to be very difficult to recruit a voluntary population into housing at the periphery of the city. However, Minneapolis offers some great advantages in that respect. Minneapolis is one of the few cities in the country which has viable residential areas which are publicly accessible. I think the key is maintaining a density that will allow people to retain some of those characteristics which they associate with the good life and housing, and at the same time move them closer to the center of the city.
Density itself does not necessarily lead to alienation. The private developers claim they cannot build economically feasible developments unless the densities are very high in order to produce rental income that then will meet mortgage obligations, something of the order, say, of 350 to 400 people per acre, which for Minneapolis is indeed comparatively high. Densities of that order may be beneficial for the Twin Cities area, and so that might not become a problem at all. Cities with the average density of Minneapolis suffer from undercrowding in the sense that the desirable networks of friendship and neighboring that people may want are not fulfilled. specifically because the densities are so low that people are unwilling to spend the time needed to make the move across wider areas of space to engage in such networks.
It's characteristic of Americans to have a housing image which is essentially rural. Americans are still attached to that rural imagery as the locus of the good life. A very small segment of the American population really chooses an urban setting for housing by choice. And of course, this is the sort of thing which is created is fleeing to the suburbs.
If anybody is such a damn fool that he wants to live in the suburbs, I don't think there's much we can do about it. But I think, generally speaking, young people are preferring to come into the city. I think that's the wave of the future.
Reflecting many of the ideas presented earlier, an imaginary trip into the future, employing scale models, will illustrate a possible image for the area in the years to come. The Harmon Mini Mall project would create a pedestrian-oriented arts, restaurant, and shopping link between the Guthrie Theater Walker Arts Complex, Loring Park, and the Hennepin Avenue Entertainment District. Straddling Harmon Place and Lower Hennepin Avenue, the mini mall would combine apartments, art galleries, and offices with ethnic restaurants, craft and design shops, service and parking facilities. Within 5 to 10 minutes walking distance from work opportunities, Loring Park, and the downtown shopping and entertainment district, the development would provide adequate parking and public transit access, enabling comfortable connections with all other parts of the Twin Cities. A variety of housing types designed to create a socially balanced community by attracting people from various income groups would be centered around open, planted spaces for use as extensions of Loring Park and as safe play areas for children. Open spaces would act as semi-private, quiet extensions of individual living rooms, away from the public traffic. Central focus for the Harmon Place perspective, looking towards downtown, would be a new office, hotel, and shopping complex. Pedestrian arcades and a plaza enhanced by trees, sculptures, and fountains would create a vital transition between the mini mall and the Hennepin Avenue Entertainment District, making the mall an exciting place, both day and night. Several selected architecturally significant buildings in the area would be restored and preserved. The Lower Hennepin Avenue complex, acting as an entryway to the west side of downtown, would present a radically altered dynamic image. The anticipated Billy Graham Institute facilities and the new State Junior College buildings would closely connect new residential office and commercial facilities. Apartment structures dotting the western access to downtown would create a transition from St. Mary's Basilica to the proposed multi-story auto center. The center would shelter several relocated auto services, retailers, parts sale businesses, and parking in a facility intimately connected to the main western access to downtown routes. The buildings you see here in gray exist today as a challenge for tomorrow. From the corner of 7th Street and the future Hennepin Avenue, one would see a new performing arts and commercial complex, an entertainment center with bowling alleys, games and club facilities, offices, and a variety of small shops. Intersecting Hennepin Avenue further along, today's 6th Street will become a strong pedestrian link, connecting the new government center with the Butler Square shopping and office complex north of Hennepin. A new merchandise mart, a hotel and convention facility, and an information center for Minneapolis located between Butler Square and the retail and office core would generate a dynamic new focus for downtown activities. The historical remodeled Butler Brothers building would become both visually and functionally integrated with the major retail and office core south of Hennepin Avenue. West of the Butler Square, a youth center featuring a hostel, a restaurant, and a specialized retail center would complement the image of the area north of tomorrow's Hennepin Avenue. Inevitably, only the desires and actions of human beings can convert our imaginary trip into a living future.
If we can't do it in Minneapolis, we can't do it anywhere in America.